And leader of his party.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Excuse me. It's a pleasure to rise at second reading to discuss the Act respecting the Police Act. Madam Speaker, the content of the Act is positive. Some positive changes are proposed here, Madam Speaker, and in principle, they seem perfectly reasonable and will be helpful, represent progress. We'll, of course, get into some details at the committee stage. However, a tremendous opportunity was lost here, Madam Speaker, to do more. This discussions around updating the Police Act started back in 2015. And in 2019, the report by Alphonse McNeil to Minister of Public Safety of the day recommended the creation of a serious incident response team. And I've been calling for the creation of a serious incident response team in New Brunswick since 2019, Madam Speaker. And this update of the Police Act would have been the perfect time to enshrine that in law, to create it. And it's not here. It's not here. Despite the police killings we've had recently, thinking of Rodney Levi and Chantal Moore, for example, despite situations in Moncton where the RCMP say they, in 2 years, twice, they haven't been able to find reports by the outside independent serious incident response teams that investigated those shootings. So we've got an issue here, Madam Speaker, that this bill should have addressed, and it doesn't. And that's quite disappointing. There's been plenty of time to put together a bill that incorporated provision for a serious incident response team in the province, and it's not here. So we remain dependent on those serious incident response teams from elsewhere in the country, and we shouldn't be in that position. So that's an issue, and it speaks to the problem, really, Madam Speaker, of this legislature not having a standing committee on law reform, as I have said many, many times, that as lawmakers here in the Legislative Assembly, we all have a role to play in not just dealing with bills that come forward to be turned into law, but to actually look at statutes that are in place that need reform because they've been there a long time, haven't been updated, haven't evolved, haven't been modernized, and we hear this over and over again. And the statutes sit there way too long. We just recently had a discussion about the Residential Tenancies Act, Madam Speaker, and the recommendation of the Clerk of the Executive Council's report to modernize the Residential Tenancies Act. Well, if we had a standing committee on law reform, I have no doubt that would have come to committee for discussion long ago. Similarly, with respect to the Police Act, that's an obvious one, given the changes in society, Madam Speaker, given the spate of police shootings, that this would have been an issue before.
Just ask for some quieting in the chamber.
A standing committee on law reform. So we don't have one yet, but we need one. The other thing, Madam Speaker, I would say is, you know, policing is a tough job, absolutely. It's, I have the deepest of respect for police constables and the work they do week in and week out is hard. It takes a toll on your psyche, and I've seen it happen to my cousin's husband. It's hard, stressful work and important work by times, but society has changed and the training hasn't changed that much. So that's the other thing that this bill could have done, Madam Speaker, was address the training required to become a police constable, Madam Speaker, because it still is based essentially on quite an old model. 34 weeks of training at Holland College, in our case here, to become a police constable, or a cadet, I guess, and then a constable. So, given how society has changed significantly, it would seem appropriate, both in terms of better preparing men and women to become police constables, to help them better, more effectively do their work, and to also better serve the public with better, more comprehensively trained officers. I remember one of the many meetings and discussions I had over the years with former Fredericton Chief of Police, Leanne Fitch. She thought that we need to evolve on the training side. And she was the first police officer hired into the Fredericton Police Force with a university degree. And one could imagine, her idea, not mine, one could imagine a mix of community college and university courses, Madam Speaker, over a couple of years to qualify to be hired onto a police force. So a more comprehensive, broad-based program, the practical training, as well as, university courses in psychology, sociology, and so on. So, Madam Speaker, there was no discussion, apparently, in drafting this bill of changing the requirements for police training. And as I said, there's been discussion about updating the Police Act since 2015, and here we are 6 years later, and some very important issues are not addressed by this bill. And it's surprising, really, Madam Speaker, given the public focus on policing in recent years, the killing of mostly African American men by police officers in the United States. George Floyd has touched everybody, as did the shootings of Rodney Levi and Chantal Moore here in New Brunswick. So it's kind of been top of mind for a little while now for the public. And I expect if people heard that there were amendments to the Police Act coming, there would be an assumption that it would be fairly comprehensive, address the range of issues that have built up over time because there hasn't been any fundamental or substantive, large, comprehensive amendments of the Act for some time. But that's not the case. So I guess I'm just expressing my disappointment, Madam Speaker, and will continue to advocate that we create in this House a Standing Committee on Law Reform to supplement the work that the folks in law reform in the Office of the Attorney General do. They do good work. There's only 2 of them as far as I know. And we've got a lot of statutes on the books here. And so this would be a great complement to their work. Identify legislation that does need serious reform. In past years, and I can imagine this, the Bar Association, whatever it's called in New Brunswick, I forget right now, but New Brunswick Bar?
Brunswick Law Society.
Law Society, there you go, thank you. New Brunswick Law Society. New Brunswick Law Society has a law reform committee, or has had for many years, I'm familiar with. I'm assuming they still have it. So you can imagine, the Standing Committee on Law Reform interacting with the New Brunswick Law Society's Committee on Law Reform, interacting with the Attorney General offices team on law reform, we'd have a much more fulsome ability to tackle law reform in the system, and perhaps a bill like this wouldn't have come forward without being more fulsome than it is. With that said, Madam Speaker, we'll have plenty of questions at committee because of the details of the bill. We want to make sure it's right. The time limits that are in here are good, but we want to make sure that they're going to be adhered to. And so, as always, the devil is in the detail in legislation. Words matter, as we know, and so we'll have a good deep dive on it at committee, which is the way things should work. So, Madam Speaker, I will wrap up there and see if there's any other colleagues who might have something to say here at second reading debate. But in principle, certainly this bill at second reading has my support. Thank you.